Have you ever wondered about the strange and mysterious deaths in the Bible? Some people died instantly, others in shocking ways. Were these deaths punishments from God? Did they commit terrible sins, or were there deeper reasons behind their fate? Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin were the mysterious words seen by King Belshazzar during a grand feast he hosted in Babylon. As the king and his guests drank from the sacred vessels taken from the temple in Jerusalem, a disembodied hand appeared and wrote these words on the wall. Terrified, Belshazzar called for Daniel to interpret the message. Daniel explained that the words meant God had numbered the days of Belshazzar's reign. He had been weighed on the scales and found lacking, and his kingdom would be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night, Babylon fell to the Persians, and King Belshazzar was killed. If you enjoy our content, please like, share, and subscribe as we embark on this narration. King Belshazzar's story is one of pride, disrespect, and swift judgment. He ruled Babylon during a time when the kingdom was rich and powerful, but his reign ended in a dramatic and sudden way. One night, Belshazzar hosted a grand feast for 1,000 of his nobles. The celebration was filled with wine, laughter, and music. In his pride and arrogance, Belshazzar ordered that the sacred gold and silver cups, which had been taken from the temple in Jerusalem, be brought to the banquet. These cups were holy, used only in the worship of God, but Belshazzar used them as common drinking vessels, filling them with wine for himself, his nobles, his wives, and his concubines. As they drank, they praised the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, completely disregarding the holiness of the items. Belshazzar's use of the sacred items from the temple was a direct act of disrespect toward God. These items were taken from the temple in Jerusalem by King Nebuchadnezzar when Babylon conquered Judah. They were holy vessels dedicated to the worship and service of God. By using them for his own pleasure at a party, Belshazzar treated these sacred objects as if they were ordinary. This act of disrespect showed Belshazzar's disregard for the holiness of God. He not only used the vessels inappropriately, but also praised false gods while doing so. This combination of actions, disrespecting what was holy and praising idols, was seen as an offense to God. Because of this great offense, God sent a clear and immediate message to Belshazzar through the writing on the wall. The words declared that his kingdom would come to an end and that his life would be taken. That very night, Babylon was invaded by the Persians, and Belshazzar was killed. His disrespect for the holy items brought about his downfall, as it was the final act of arrogance and irreverence that led to his death. Hophni and Phinehas, the sons of Eli, were priests in Israel who served at the tabernacle, but their actions were corrupt and dishonorable. Though they held important positions, the Bible describes them as wicked men who had no regard for the Lord or his laws. When the people came to offer sacrifices, Hophni and Phinehas would send their servants to take the best portions of meat before the sacrifices were even offered to God. They would demand raw meat, threatening violence if they didn't get what they wanted. This was a serious violation of the sacrificial system, which was meant to honor God, not serve the greed of the priests. In addition to their abuse of the offerings, Hophni and Phinehas committed further sins by sleeping with the women who served at the entrance of the tabernacle. This behavior was both immoral and blasphemous, as they defiled the holiness of God's dwelling place. Their actions demonstrated deep disrespect for the sacred duties entrusted to them as priests. When Eli, their father, heard of their wicked behavior, he rebuked them, warning them that their sins were great and that no one could intercede for them if they sinned against the Lord. However, his sons ignored his warnings and continued in their blasphemous ways. The Bible later reveals that God had already decided to bring judgment upon them because of their hardened hearts, leading to their tragic end as a result of their desecration of God's holy work. Because of their actions, God sent a prophet to Eli, warning him that judgment was coming upon his household. God declared that Eli's family would no longer serve as priests, and that both of his sons would die on the same day as a sign of this judgment. 1 Samuel 2:27-34. This prophecy was fulfilled during a battle between Israel and the Philistines. Israel went to war, and in desperation they brought the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield, hoping that it would secure victory. Hophni and Phinehas accompanied the Ark, but instead of victory, Israel suffered a crushing defeat. The Philistines not only defeated the Israelites, but also captured the Ark, and both Hophni and Phinehas were killed in the battle, just as God had foretold. 1 Samuel 4:10-11. When news of the defeat and the death of his sons reached Eli, he was sitting by the roadside. Upon hearing that the Ark of the Covenant had been captured, Eli, who was old and blind, fell backward from his chair, broke his neck, and died. 1 Samuel 4:18. Jezebel met a dramatic and gruesome end as foretold by the prophet Elijah. After King Ahab's death, Jezebel continued her reign in Jezreel, but her actions had made her a target for judgment. The prophecy came to fruition during the reign of Jehu, who was anointed king of Israel to bring an end to Ahab's house and Jezebel's influence. Jehu, known for his ruthless pursuit of justice, arrived in Jezreel with a clear mandate from God. When he approached the palace, he demanded that Jezebel be thrown from her window. The defiant queen, unrepentant until the end, was hurled from the high window of her palace. As she fell, horses in the courtyard below trampled her, and her lifeless body was left unburied for some time. When Jehu arrived at the scene, he ordered that her remains be buried. However, the prophecy of Elijah was fulfilled in a horrifying manner. Only her skull, feet, and the palms of her hands were found. The dogs of Jezreel had consumed the rest of her body, leaving nothing but fragments of her once proud and powerful form. Jezebel's blasphemous actions began with her covetous desire for a vineyard owned by Naboth, a respected man of Jezreel. This vineyard, situated conveniently near the palace, was coveted by King Ahab for his own use as a vegetable garden. When Naboth steadfastly refused to sell his ancestral land, insisting on his right to keep it as a family inheritance, Ahab's frustration grew. Seizing the opportunity to fulfill her desires, Jezebel devised a cunning and ruthless plan. She wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealing them with his royal seal. These letters were sent to the elders and nobles of Jezreel, commanding them to hold a fast and elevate Naboth in a prominent position among the people. Jezebel's instructions were clear. False witnesses were to accuse Naboth of cursing both God and the king. The plan was executed with chilling efficiency. During the assembly, the hired false witnesses spoke deceitfully, condemning Naboth as a blasphemer. As a result, Naboth was falsely charged with blasphemy and taken outside the city to be stoned to death. With Naboth out of the way, Jezebel and Ahab seized the coveted vineyard, their greed now satisfied. But their triumph was short-lived. God's judgment was swift and severe. The prophet Elijah delivered a dire message. Jezebel's demise was foretold, and Ahab's lineage would be extinguished. Jezebel's actions, driven by malice and deceit, led to her ultimate downfall. Ananias and Sapphira fell down at Peter's feet and died, their sudden and tragic deaths sending a powerful shockwave through the early Christian community. This dramatic consequence was the result of their grievous deceit and attempt to deceive the Holy Spirit. The story unfolded when Ananias and Sapphira, who were part of the early church, decided to sell a piece of property. The early Christians were known for their extraordinary generosity, selling their possessions and giving the proceeds to support the apostles in the church's mission. Ananias and Sapphira wanted to appear part of this noble effort, but their hearts were filled with deceit. Ananias sold the property and brought only a portion of the money to the apostles, pretending it was the full amount. He presented it with a show of piety, as if he were giving all the proceeds while secretly keeping back part of the money. His wife, Sapphira, was complicit in the deception. The Holy Spirit revealed their dishonesty to Peter. Confronting Ananias, Peter asked, "Ananias, how is it that Satan has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and kept for yourself some of the money you received for the land? Didn't it belong to you before it was sold?" And after it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not just lied to human beings, but to God." As Peter spoke these words, Ananias fell down and died. The young men who witnessed the event quickly carried his body out and buried him. About 3 hours later, Sapphira came in, unaware of her husband's fate. Peter asked her if the amount they had given was the full price of the property. Sapphira, also deceiving, confirmed the lie. Peter then revealed the truth of her imminent fate, saying, "How could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also." Immediately, Sapphira fell down at Peter's feet and died. The men came in, found her dead, and buried her beside her husband. Nadab and Abiu, the sons of Aaron, had been given a special role as priests to serve before the Lord in the tabernacle. As priests, they were responsible for carrying out God's instructions exactly as He had commanded, especially regarding offerings and sacrifices. However, one day they made a terrible mistake that cost them their lives. In their priestly duties, Nadab and Abiu decided to offer unauthorized fire before the Lord. This means they used fire and incense that God had not commanded. Perhaps they acted carelessly, or maybe they tried to do things their own way instead of following God's clear instructions. Either way, their actions were a serious act of disrespect because they approached God in a manner that was not holy or obedient. As they brought the unauthorized fire into the tabernacle, fire suddenly came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them. In an instant, Nadab and Abiu died because they had not honored God's holiness. King Sennacherib of Assyria was a powerful and ambitious ruler who sought to conquer the kingdom of Judah during the reign of King Hezekiah. After already capturing many cities in Judah, Sennacherib set his sights on Jerusalem, sending his military commander, the Rabshakeh, to deliver a threatening message to the people and their king. Standing before the walls of Jerusalem, the Rabshakeh shouted in Hebrew so all could hear, mocking their trust in Hezekiah and, more importantly, in the God of Israel. He reminded the people that no nation or god had been able to stand against Assyria. He boasted that the gods of other lands, like Hamath, Arpad, and Sepharvaim, had all failed to protect their people. Rabshakeh boldly claimed that the God of Israel would be no different, insisting that Hezekiah's promises of deliverance were lies. He called on the people of Jerusalem to surrender, warning that resistance was futile because no god, not even their own, could save them from the mighty hand of Sennacherib. After King Sennacherib of Assyria mocked the God of Israel and threatened Jerusalem, King Hezekiah turned to the Lord for help. He sought the counsel of the prophet Isaiah, who assured him that God had heard Sennacherib's blasphemies and would deliver Jerusalem. Isaiah prophesied that Sennacherib would not enter the city or even shoot an arrow at it. God promised that he would defend the city for his own sake and for the sake of his servant David, 2 Kings 19:32-34, Isaiah 37-33-35. That night, the angel of the Lord struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in their camp, killing them in their sleep. 2 Kings 19:35, Isaiah 37:36. When Sennacherib awoke the next morning and saw the devastation, he was forced to retreat in shame and return to Nineveh. This miraculous event demonstrated God's power and protection over his people, in stark contrast to Sennacherib's boast that no god could deliver Jerusalem. After his return to Nineveh, Sennacherib met a tragic end. While he was worshipping in the temple of his god Nisroch, he was assassinated by his own sons, Adramelech and Sharezer, 2 Kings 19:36-37, Isaiah 37:38. Thus, Sennacherib's life ended in disgrace, fulfilling God's promise to protect his people and vindicating his name against the Assyrian king's blasphemous claims. In examining the stories of King Belshazzar, Hophni and Phinehas, Jezebel, Ananias and Sapphira, Nadab and Abiu, King Herod Agrippa I, and King Sennacherib, we witness a profound theme: the grave consequences of disrespecting God and His holiness. Each of these figures, through their arrogance, deceit, or defiance, faced swift and severe judgment, serving as a stark reminder of the importance of honoring the sacred and the consequences of turning away from divine commandments. These narratives underscore a timeless truth that God's justice prevails, and those who choose to disregard his authority and holiness ultimately find themselves at odds with the divine. As we reflect on these accounts, we are encouraged to pursue a life of integrity, reverence, and humility before God, recognizing that our actions have significant spiritual implications. Thank you for watching to the end. Share widely and do not forget to hit the subscription button.